want to pivot to the concept of forced fun. So, why am I showing you this
What
picture?
is that?
This this is from Jake, not from State Farm, who said forced fun feels like being one of the Apollo 11 astronauts, hermetically sealed in an airstream, and fake laughing as the boss tells inappropriate jokes about them.
Oh my God.
Now, when he said that, I went, I know the picture.
That's Nixon, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's Tricky Dick, and
Oh
that's
my God.
now.
Oh my God.
Now you remember why they were in the airstream because we thought moon germs were more contagious than COVID-19, right? So does Jake have a point here? I mean, is force fun? Is that what's going on? I mean, is it sort of a vehicle for the person up on high to control you and abuse you? Or are there other aspects going on here, folks?
You can't yell at people to laugh and expect them to want to laugh or to like you. So, it's very disingenuous doing that for sure. I'm sure you've seen it, Karyn.
Oh my gosh. I know, it's just like, you're going to go down, you're going to have fun, and, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Oh,
Yeah. And, and that's why it is so important, I think, to really have this diffuse into the culture, and to have these kinds of things that are co-created because people support what they co-create rather than being directed down from the top. I don't know. What do you think about that, David?
Oh, I think definitely giving people a sense of agency to create something that's authentic to those who are on the front line versus, coming from the top down, because there's a natural resistance to authority. Like we have that as human beings. We like to poke fun at those on top. It helps us mitigate our own emotions. And so when, fun comes from the top, it just doesn't feel right. Giving people kind of a say is so much more magical than telling people what to say. I mean, if you go to an improv show and the audience gives a suggestion to the improvisers and then they make magic on stage, the audience feels like they're part of it. Right. Whereas if the improvisers get on stage and they're like, we're going to talk about cupcakes, and the audience is like, well, then why are we here?
Well, right. And, and from a brain perspective, one of the things that fires up the brain is autonomy. Mm-hmm. People don't want to be told what to do. I mean, we certainly saw that during the pandemic, and, it's the same thing in the workplace. And that's why, as David said, and, the ability to co-create like you do in improv is something that'll get a lot more buy-in and a lot of more participation, and people will actually enjoy it more because they're not pushing against.
Well, one thing Jake said to me after he had a few adult beverages, I met him at a camp reunion. And so he's a bit younger than I am. He probably
band camp.
What's that?
Band camp?
No, overnight camp, co-ed overnight camp. Not not anything in particular. One that I was aligned with in as a child in Connecticut, and then worked as a staff member, and then became involved as an alumni member. But what he said to me, and he works in a. He asked that I not mention the name of the company, but it's in the financial services. And what he said was, the forced fun that happens makes him feel as if I make you laugh, then I can get more out of you, and I will own you while you were here because we're having a good time. And when he said that, I thought about a show that David and I really like, which is Severance on Apple TV Plus, which really gets this idea of forced fun in a very strange science fiction type of way, in which the people that are at the office, they are completely owned. And then one of the people comes in with a fruit tray and they dance and they have a good time and everything. But I think he kind of has a point there. That's a bad use of trying to use humor, is to own people. It should make them feel good about their time there, but also allow them to be free and have a life outside the office. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that if they can, select in or select out, I mean, that's going to be a big part of that. And I think the reason that sometimes they force the fun is because a lot of people are selecting out. Right there should be a clue that you have a problem. If people are selecting out of a good time, then it's not really a good time. And what does that mean? What is the organization, what is the culture telling you if people want to opt out of a fun time? And so I think that there needs to be some real introspection there on the leadership part.
People can feel inauthenticity from the top too, just like when somebody goes on stage, or I mean, even in a day-to-day interaction, the person who's trying to be funny, you can tell. And nobody wants to be around that person. But if it comes naturally, then people are like, when's the next time I'm going to hang out with Jake? And that's a very important part of it. Also, the distinction of like, why are you trying to get people to have fun? Are you trying to get more out of them? Because if that's the case, rethink it, because what you really want to do as somebody in a leadership position is give your people the opportunity to come together and connect as people versus, we're going to have fun together because then they'll be more productive next quarter. It's like, let that be a side effect that naturally happens versus the end game.
This reminds me of a time when I spoke to this company. I spoke to the leadership in Chicago, and they were just like, oh my gosh, this is just this is awesome. Best thing since Velcro. Would you come back in 6 weeks, and talk to everybody from middle management down to housekeeping? And it's like, pause 3 counts for just your presence and say, oh, well, yeah, of course I can do that. But I came back in 6 weeks, and I, over the course of 3 days, spoke to every department. And the one thing that really surprised me was that on the evaluations consistently was, oh, this was great. I wish my boss could have heard it. The bosses didn't attend. They weren't using any of the things that they were taught. And it felt so inauthentic. And it felt like this separation of church and state here. It was like, why, miles apart.